Sounds good.
All right. Dr. Zena Jackson, I offer you the floor.
Thank you, Mindy. I appreciate it. I just mentioned that we have received the minutes. We've received some updates from some of our committee members, and we have made those notations and updates. Just wanted to make sure that you all did receive those. They were sent out by Mindy a little bit ago. And if you have any concerns or any corrections, definitely speak up if you know those now, or send us an email so that we can get those corrected before we post them in our Teams site. Otherwise, I would ask for approval of the minutes unless you have concerns. All approved?
We'll need a motion in a second.
I move that the minutes be accepted.
Second, Edith.
Thank you, Rod. Thank you, Edith. All approved?
Aye.
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 Any concerns? I think there's another word for it. Okay, we'll adopt the minutes as they have been submitted. And thank you, Dr. Newman, for getting those to us. I think this is, we talked about in our officers meeting an opportunity where we would reach a point where we would begin our transition from breaking out into our subcommittees to no longer doing that, and then going back to having our general committee discussions. And the officers wanted to bring this before you as a recommendation. I think the work that's being done at the committee level, subcommittee level is great work. And as far as I can tell and what I'm hearing from the committee liaisons and from the facilitators, that at least one committee feels like they are just about done with what they feel like their charges were. And then the other is very close, and I will speak on behalf of our of the committee that I'm on, where we are also very close in addressing that third point that we have to address, but it's going to be in line with the credential flow committee. And so we are proposing that after this meeting, not this one, but after this meeting, that we will no longer break out into the subcommittee work groups, if you will, and we will stay together so that we can begin to synchronize what we have learned and what we have put together in our subgroup committees into what will eventually be our final reporting document for the work that we are doing. And so I'll open up the floor for conversation. And Mindy, do you want to, if I've left anything out in that conversation, do you want to add to it, or you, Dr. Jackson, or any of the officers?
I will make one comment. We haven't discussed this explicitly, but I think implicit in this transition is that one or more subcommittees might break out to follow up on a point. Coming together to discuss the joint work product of these three subcommittees, these very productive subcommittees, does not preclude follow-up consultation among subcommittee members.
Thank you, Mindy, for sharing that. Any others? Dr. Jackson, do you have anything to add?
Not much, just that I think we've made a lot of progress and excited that we'll be moving forward collectively now to share and to really pull together all of the pieces that we need to complete our goals. So excited to listen in today.
Dr. Jackson, are there any other comments or concerns about us moving in that direction? And that would be, let me go to my calendar. So our next meeting is scheduled for June the 30th. So on June the 30th, we would not break out into the subcommittee discussions. If there is a need for additional subcommittee meetings, then that would be a meeting that would be scheduled through the facilitator or someone else on that committee for there to have an outside discussion. Obviously not on the day and the time that we are meeting as a work group. Okay, Well, hearing no objections, and that will be our plan for June 30th. We do have still just a little bit of work to do with regard to the subcommittee work. I just want to say thank you to everyone who stepped in 2 weeks ago when I could not attend the meeting, and say I appreciate that you kept everything going, and that, you know, having read through the notes and the minutes, it looks like, again, great work was happening, as I heard in the officers meeting. I think we all welcome Jennifer to our team, and she's already jumped right in to give us really good feedback, and we appreciate that. And Mindy, before we break out into our breakout sessions, let me just ask from the coordinating board and TEA and workforce areas, do we have members who will join us? They're already predefined, or will you all be popping in and out of those subcommittee meetings?
I expect us to, staff who are here from TEA and the coordinating board, I expect us to consider continuing the breakout groups that we've attended.
Okay.
We may pop in to talk to other groups as well. But why don't we just, agency staffs at our respective agencies, why don't we just continue our subcommittee visitations, and as we feel relevant, let's just go visit to see if we can be of assistance anywhere else.
And I'm going to try to see if I have, I don't have the pop-up button or select in this screen. I never did update my Zoom. So I want to make sure everyone can see on their screen the button that allows them to go into their respective committee.
And I'm realizing, up there it is.
There it
You
is.
should see it now.
Okay.
And off they go. Okay. I will stay here for the time being,
Okay.
just to keep company with anyone that Valerie has to add manually.
Okay. Perfect. We'll see you back here at about, what did we say? 2:30.
Okay, very good.
Hello, everyone. Are we all back now? Are we still waiting on anyone? We're down to 15 participants, so I think we're missing probably the credential flow team. We'll give them, they ought to have about 30 seconds now before they'll pop back. Everybody's back now? All right. So we are ready for reporting out. Do we have volunteers of who wants to go first? I'm happy to do it for our team if you all don't. Yes. So, okay, I'll report out for secondary, and then we'll have credential flow and then industry. Will that work? Okay, so we again went back to look at our bridge, at our charge for the bridge courses or bridge program, had really good discussions around what that might look like as a model for the state of Texas, and learned from our colleagues at San Antonio College, Alamo, that both of whom are CAE institutions, that they participate in a Gen Cyber summer youth program for students who are in between, I think the age level group is 6th grade to 9th grade. It's a very competitive entry program, it sounds like, for students. And it is nationally grant funded. So it's a lot of work put into getting a program such as that set up at their institutions and then maintaining it. It involves the NSA and their evaluation of the curriculum and the work that's being done by those individuals there. Of course, the program is free to the students. It includes speakers, meals, snacks, materials, books, and they get a Raspberry alone. I don't know if they get it, but it's available at the schools for the students to utilize. So it looks like a really great program that if we could model something of that nature for summer and for students who may or may not have an interest, but a way for us to introduce cybersecurity to them starting in the 6th grade through the 9th grade. The reason we focus on 6th through 9th graders is to allow for students to catch them early enough before they have established just yet what they think their future careers will be. And so therefore they're already set in their minds on what they're going to do and how they're going to do it. And it sounds like for the Gen Cyber program, that's exactly what they do. It is a national program. The website is www.gen-cyber.com if you want to go and take a look at that. We also talked a lot about these summer programs, these bridge programs, helping to catch students, not just to teach them the world of cybersecurity, but to focus on those, if you will, those tech-like those tech-like soft skills that students need to understand, need to grasp, need to adhere to and abide by, which include the ethics of the role of being in cybersecurity and the role of cyberbullying with students or other students. We talked a little bit about how other students have been impacted by those who are very adept in the cyber world or even social media at cyberbullying, and also those who are adept enough to know how to be dangerous just in a minor way with their knowledge and using that in an unethical way. So we touched on white hat and black hat and how we want to really focus our efforts on not only recruiting and engaging those students, but to help them realize the role that they would play in a really ideal cyber world as a white hat hacker, if you would. And then we jump to the third challenge or the third charge that we had, which is in creating a Texas Cyber Path. And I shared just very briefly, I'll post it in the chat. I have a contact with Tarleton State University, Dr. Dale Carmen. And through our work over the last really 2 years, we've created 3 BAAS transfer articulation agreements between Tarrant County College and Tarleton State University, where they will accept our WECM courses toward any of the 3 BAAS programs. And if it's not already on Tarrant County's website, it will be soon. So they're working out those details to get that up on the website. So we're excited. So the 3 would be, one is an IT pathway, the other is a management pathway, the other is a criminal justice pathway, but all with cybersecurity at the foremost of our discussions. And of course, we have the articulation agreement with Collin College as well. So that's where we ended. Any questions? Okay, credential flow, you ready to go next?
Sure, I'll step up, Dr. Jackson.
Could I ask a question before Joe begins? And you may have alluded to this, Zena, and I just didn't get it in the discussion. I was fiddling with things here. What would be the key issues the larger group needs to consider as it moves forward collectively?
So the key issue, one is the, if we don't have students going through a summer bridge program, but students don't have the foundation courses that they would need to be a success in the program, how would we introduce a credit course, if you would, into the curriculum that would support that student getting that foundational knowledge to be able to move forward in the program? And that's something that Troy brought up, and I made a note of that. Sorry, I didn't cover it. On how would we address that, that facet of what the students would need who don't have the computer background to be able to move forward. Stacy also had addressed the need for us to be very careful in terms of, scheduling summer bridge programs, if you would, or summer courses, in considering what that impact would be on those students. We talked about how some students get out of schools earlier and later, or go back to schools early and later. And some of the rural programs that rural high schools that may not have the infrastructure in place to be able to support the model that we would create and offer up as an option for students to pursue and be introduced to the program.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Jackson and team, we discussed some very similar issues or reporting, I would say. To start with, we're very close to finalizing 2 different degree plans, one which is highly technical, and the second one, which Gregory came up with, was the idea of a policy and risk management track, which looks at, you have to have that first year technical background, but it also looks at the soft side of cybersecurity, if you will, auditing and risk management and vulnerability assessments, those type of things. So we're in the process of putting those 2 degree plans together. In terms of some of the issues that we brought up or ideas, we brought up teacher credentials to be able to teach in a dual credit manner in high school. I brought up the fact that there's many enlisted men and women who have many years in cybersecurity. They don't have a bachelor's degree, but they may have a CSAF, Security College of the Air Force degree at the associate's level, but yet they cannot teach at the dual credit in high school so that students can gain credit for college. So teacher credentials was a part of our discussion. Summer camps, which was mentioned by Dr. Jackson, was also suggested that if you have a 4-year program, for instance, with ICSI, the Institute for Cybersecurity Innovation, with Josh Beck and at Northeast ISD, their freshmen start in August. So Cyber Texas, my nonprofit, offered a summer camp. So we paid for those rising 9th graders to go through a 1-week cyber camp and potentially a 2nd week in July if they wish, to have a a foundation for them as they enter into their freshman year. So summer camps were also touted in our committee. The other would be Cyber Patriot and the NCCDC. We need these students to, they can start in middle school for Cyber Patriot. They can also compete in high school. It's an online, hands-on program that students, we have to emphasize that Cyber Patriot or something similar, a competition, there is Cyber Start America and others that are out there, should be incorporated into what we're pushing forward. Not only that, but Gregory thankfully brought up the idea of a UIL sanctioned program for cybersecurity. I'm pushing for Cyber Patriot. I believe that's the best program we have, is a UIL. So Gregory, I'm fortunate, I'll be teaming with Gregory to see what we can do in order to make that happen. Also at the community college level, there is the National Collegiate Cyber Defense Competition that we highly recommend 2-year community colleges form teams and participate. There have been community colleges who have competed quite well against four-year institutions. And I believe 1 year, a 2-year may have even won the NCCDC competition. So competitions in cybersecurity are available, and we highly recommend that students participate. Instructors, teachers promote it, and that we find mentors in order to help these students. Lastly, I brought up a program that I had started for all of you to know is the Air Force provides extra stripes that they walk into here in San Antonio when they become recruits. They walk in with 0 stripes on their sleeves. If you have a master's degree, I'm sorry, an associate's degree, you may earn a stripe. If you have a college degree or many college hours, you may earn even more stripes. But also, if you have some type of license or certificate, you can earn a stripe and earn a bonus. So my idea about 5 years ago was to create stripes for certs. If you have back then an A+ certificate or a Network Plus certificate or a Security Plus certificate, why aren't we giving these recruits a bonus to come and also earn a stripe or two? They're going to be trained anyway for many, many weeks at their technical training after boot camp. So why not save money and time by giving these folks a stripe and potential money in order for them to advance their career and help our nation?
Did that go anywhere?
It is policy. I'm proud to say I started it when I was in the Air Force, and it was approved as Air Force policy. It's not called Stripes for Certs, but it is there, and they do give bonuses and I believe stripes for these recruits. I also heard other services were looking into the idea. I'm looking for the link that would show what certificates would be acceptable by the Air Force. I've heard things such as an Eagle Scout, you earn a stripe. A commercial driver's license, you may earn a stripe, or other things would earn additional bonuses. So it's not just what I came up with. I just applied what else was given, and why not a cybersecurity cert?
Well, congratulations. Good idea.
Thank you.
Great job, Joe. Great job.
Thank you. That's all for me.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate you sharing out. Industry?
Well, before we move on, I'm sorry to keep jumping in. May I ask a question?
Sure.
When I was sitting in with credentials flow, it was discussed or asked whether a Cert 1 at the secondary level would be sufficient to keep one on this pathway. And I may not be expressing this correctly, so correct me if I'm not. And I think there was curiosity in that discussion about where P-TECH programs typically take this. And I'm curious to bring it up here so that we don't lose it. Not all students are going to be able to exit secondary with an applied associate intact, but they should, for this design, be on a pathway. Do your P-TECHs, those of you who are involved, have different levels of credentialing? That a student may exit with on that pathway?
I don't know.
Okay, and I'm hoping that some of our TEA folks could jump in. And it can also be a discussion for another time. Let me not delay this discussion to go into a discussion of that.
Mindy, this is Rick. At a high level, yes, there's different exits, level 1 certificates that they can earn going through that before they finish their full AAS degree.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I'm specifically wanting to know what students do in dual credit, before they graduate. But let's just table that for now. Time is running short. Thank you. And where were you, industry perspective?
Hello, everybody. We discussed cybersecurity programs, a study for 2020, and how it was possible to actually get through it without taking a single cybersecurity course. and that not many campuses actually offer cybersecurity, instead focusing on IT. And one of the reasons is there's concern about needing a separate network for cybersecurity courses, because you don't want hackers running all over your school network. We advanced on to talking about how training should actually be vendor agnostic. So if a teacher is teaching something, don't pick on one specific product. Instead, try and make it more general. Because with IT, vendors do frequently go out of business, and then all that training is sometimes lost. Sometimes it's also very proprietary and doesn't translate over very well. How do students actually get the mandatory 5 years of experience that a lot of HR filters need? There's a shift on the industry side, hopefully, where people are starting to realize that new entrants cannot get actually 5 years of experience if everybody requires 5 years of experience. And then talking to HR departments, maybe it should be more of a portfolio combining not only their experience, but also their education, their work, and possibly certifications that they might get throughout. Once again, the age of high school dual credit people came up. How many people actually hired 13, 14-year-olds to do industry jobs versus 18 plus? Sorry, going through all my notes. There's also a concern that not enough higher ed is actually offering cybersecurity to allow for a dual credit path, especially in local areas. There are some cybersecurity programs that are online, however, not necessarily in your local area. So if there's a dual credit path that wants to be offered by a high school, they might not be able to find somebody to actually teach it. And then we started talking about seeing students actually wanting to shift over to where employers pay for your college instead of students going to college and then paying off loans. That's a modern trend amongst cybersecurity students. Actually, not just cybersecurity students, but students in general. They're looking for their employers to help fund for that education while they work for the company. And then lastly, we got into a pretty deep discussion discussing around security and certifications and teachers, and how should teachers have a certain certification in order to teach a class, and then should we align that back to the cybersecurity program of study. That way the students know that the teacher knows what they're talking about and isn't just winging it, and what certifications are basically aligned to what level. And then we ran out of time.
That time will get us every time. Are there questions for industry?
Mindy, I would like to suggest a topic for the broader group to discuss, and that is just the whole area of teacher certifications.
Agree.
We've heard all three groups now talk about this, and I think we need to address it on a broader scale.
I also want to bring out there's two different levels of certification they're talking about. One
There
is
are multiple levels of certification.
No.
What we ran into was for a teacher teaching a class, if we align a certification to it, that's great, because then we know that the teacher has that knowledge, and that knowledge will be transferred on to the students. And the students also know this teacher has the certification, they know what they're talking about. However, in cybersecurity, there are multiple levels of certifications, and they don't just say, I got my A+ certification level 1, level 2. No, somebody will get their A+ certification, and they might go on and get their CISSP certification, which is completely different. How do we say that you need a certification in any of these chains, but at least this level moving onward, so that somebody who has a CISSP can teach the course and doesn't have to go back and get an A+ certification, which would frankly be a almost waste of resources for somebody to pay for at that point.
And
Right.
our discussion was, go ahead, Dwayne, I'm sorry.
I guess my point is, industry had that one discussion about teachers teaching high school courses and being certified to teach the high school courses. Whereas the dual credit is talking about teachers teaching dual credit courses, which, that's two different, that's what I meant by two different levels.
Oh,
one
gotcha.
is the TEA requires, or what could the TEA require for the high school teachers to teach the high school courses? And then the second one is what would SACS require for teachers to teach dual credit courses? That's what I meant by the two different.
In our discussion, not to drift too far here. Our discussion was you've got a high school instructor who wants to teach information security. What is required to allow them to teach for both dual credit, as you say, and also be part of the broader discussion we're in right here. So
that could
Let's-
definitely be a discussion topic
right.
for our subsequent meeting. And let me come to a core area of this work group. What needs to be discussed as far as this pathway sequence? What issues need to be resolved between credentials flow and secondary to dual credit, or worked on collaboratively? That should be on our next agenda too. And Zena, not to take over your show here.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
And we've already talked about that we need to, of course, now come back together so that we begin to have those discussions about the pathway.
Right, and we were discussing, is it possible for this group to release a recommendation around the 5 years of experience requirement to instead have HR departments realize, in just a high level recommendation, realize that you can't ask new entrants into the job field for 5 years of experience. You should ask for more of a portfolio where you're considering that instead of just an automatic, they don't have 5 years, they're not even considered.
Daniel, it's possible. What the impact of that would be, though, is debatable. The audience for this is going to be IHEs, institutions for higher education, and secondary schools. What we post will not necessarily reach corporations.
Right, we're just kind of hoping that, if we dip the toe in the water, maybe the ripples will eventually work their way out.
Yeah, okay.
Dr.
Okay.
Jackson and Mindy, to help facilitate this discussion next week, I know we covered them in each of our reports, but might I suggest that each of the committees send 3 or 5 top priorities to us in time for our meeting next week for the officers? And then we can look at those 12 to 15, if my math was right, different priorities and determine which of those we feel are most important to tackle first, and then hopefully there's more time for others.
Excellent idea. Joe, thank you. Would the facilitators, could we get some volunteers now before the meeting closes to do that in consultation with your subcommittee? We need a volunteer from each subcommittee to consult with their fellows and get this to, I don't know, maybe Zena and me.
This is Rick. I'll do it for the credentials.
Great.
Beat me
I'll
to
do
it.
it for Zena's committee, and I can never remember its name.
This is Scott. I can do it for the industry.
Great. Okay.
This is just, and we're looking for the top 3 to 5 issues, like what Joe said.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Rod. I appreciate, and all of you for volunteering to get us those 3 to 5 priorities so that we will be able to address what those are and move forward.
And it may be more work for the 3 volunteers here, but I think maybe just a slight description or position would be helpful. So not just a list, but I think that might be helpful if they have the time to produce that. If not, a list would be plenty to start. It would just be, I think, helpful for us to know what the positions are of each of the committees.
It's an excellent suggestion, Joe. We should have these by the end of this week. The officers work group meets Monday morning. That is much appreciated, and thank you, Joe.
Yes, thank you. Are there questions? We're about 3 minutes away from the end of our meeting. I need to say I can't thank you enough for all of the great work that you're continuing to do to help us see our achieve our goals for this particular work group, and obviously to help meet our goal of completion by the end of July. Okay, if there are no other questions, thank you so much, and you all have a great rest of your week. Try to stay cool.
Thank you, everyone. Take
Bye-bye.
care. Thank you very much.
Bye. Thank you.